Did I scare ya? Hi there friends, so today I wanted to go over how I made my little thief costume. I took a break from working on YouTube for a while because I was like, I'm going to the Ren Fair in a few weeks. I want to make a new costume because I had one that I was already going to wear, but I wore that to the Colorado Ren Fair, so let's make a new one. I looked at a bunch of thief references and I kind of made up my own little design thing. So the whole thing has more armor than I originally planned, but I don't think there's anything ever wrong with having more armor. And I'm not even done with it yet because I'm working on 2 weapons at the moment. One is completely done. Where is it? Just a little dagger with a little sock that I made for it. My little scabbard. It's the first one I've ever made. I've never made a sheath for a weapon before, so yeah, I made this a long time ago. I thought it fit, you know, because what thief doesn't have a rainbow dagger in their life? So yeah, let's go ahead and hop into the video. Choose. Oh no, it rolled away. Put those back in my pouch so I can give them to my friends at the Ren Fair. Dear friends, y'all are getting some gems at the Ren Fair. Wow. So for the corset pattern, I am going off of this Simplicity pattern. It's, what is it, 7558? Is that a 7? Sorry, that's a 1. Normally I make my own pattern, but I think I'm just gonna go off of this and modify this just a little bit. I would like a more like princess curve, so it comes down to a V, and have it like come up a little bit to a V, so I'm gonna modify it a bit that way. And it does lace up in the back, so yeah, I'm just gonna use this. Alright, so I went ahead and cut the lining out. And I'm going to use the lining basically as like the mock-up because I had to do quite a bit of adjusting. The pattern itself like wrapped around me almost completely. So, and you know, keeping seam allowance in mind and everything, like that's way too big for me. So, and this always happens. This is why I normally do my own corset pattern. But anyway, so I'm using the lining that was inside of the jacket already. So I got free lining out of that, which is super cool. So it's just like this black satiny looking lining. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a little mock-up with this and see if it even fits or if I have to take it in even more. For this project, I purchased 2 trench coat leather jackets at my local thrift stores. This black one was $12, and the all brown leather one that you'll see on this costume is from a 50-cent thrifted trench coat jacket, which had a receipt in its pocket, and it was from Macy's in 1983, so I thought that was very interesting. Anyway, I'm just tearing up this jacket and placing the patterns onto the leather. I won't go over too much on making the corset because it is fairly easy. You just sew the panels together. Next time I pattern my own corset, I'll be sure to film the whole progress, but I do recommend using a professional pattern with instructions for your first corset. That way you can just get the hang of it and just kind of get used to sewing all the panels and stuff together and the shape of it, because the shape can be kind of weird even if it is just a costume corset like this one is. As you can see, one of my pieces is just a white piece of paper. That is because I edited the pattern to have a princess curve in it so that it slopes down and then it also slopes up in between the boobs. I just really like that look over the flat under bust. I don't know, I like it. It just looks good. Next, I just sew all of the panels together. Instead of the other straps that I was using that I actually made out of the black leather, I took these brown leather straps off of the other jacket that I have. It's like a brownish jacket. It's really hard to tell in this lighting, but it's brown. My plan was to do a black and brown leather corset anyway, so I'm just gonna make these the straps because look at how perfect they are already. I don't have to do any extra work. Here I am learning that I pretty much failed at the lining and that I should just give up because I don't know, I messed it up. I fucked up the lining, so what I did was I just turned over all of the edges to make it have a nice clean edge like you can see here. Now I'm just sewing the hem onto the corset and I'm making it look nice and cute, and wow. Here I'm just pinning down the boning casing along each panel seam. Once those are pinned on, I sew them down on each side. So I got all of the boning in and all of the casing sewed shut so that the boning won't slip out. I am deciding between these two eyelets. I'm kind of really liking this because it goes along with like the brown and the black theme, but this looks kind of cool too. After punching the holes, I punch in the eyelets and I tighten them up with my yellow eyelet maker thing. Now I'm just lacing up the corset to ensure it fits properly. It does have a modesty panel in the back that is sewn in on one side and it's velcroed in the other. I hate floating modesty panels because they get all wrinkly and they get all like weird and they can get lost because I move around a lot. So the velcro just helps keep everything in place. Also, this isn't the official cording that I'm using. I end up going with like a black skinny cording. I just had to test the fit for this. After making sure it fits, I wanted to make some buckles for the fake front closure, so I drew some out and I tested the fit. I then make some out of foam since they're fake and they hold no purpose other than looks. Isn't that fascinating? Oh my goodness, look at it. I did this for a very long time. I'm going for a hammered metal look, so I'm kind of just taking the end of a Sharpie and literally hitting the foam, and it's causing these really cool little indents. This is done after heating it up with the heat gun. For paint, I just hit the edges with a dry brushing of brown metallic paint. Then I install eyelets onto the straps onto the front, and I attach the warble piece that I shaped into that metal piece that actually goes through the fabric to fasten the strap. That's also like attached to the buckle, and then I literally glue those onto my corset. I can hear you yelling at me, I know. It's okay, it's a costume piece that I'll probably wear like 3 times. I won't ever wash it. It'll be over like 3 layers of clothing. So it's okay. So sometimes you just gotta improvise, make your own things. Like, it's totally fine as long as it's not useful or it's not gonna get in the way of washing, and it comes out the way that you want. Like, it really doesn't matter. It did come out piratey, but I mean, it's okay. I'm not upset at that. I really do like the way it came out. Sorry for not really going into detail much, but you can easily find this pattern online or in stores with full, easy to follow instructions. And it was gonna be really long if I were to actually like go into detail on how I made it. For the hood and the cowl, I traced out my favorite and biggest hood from a cape that I made years ago for a Mare cosplay. I put this pattern onto some cotton fabric that I got in the remnant section at Joann's, cut it, and I pinned it out along the top and back edges. Make sure to not sew your cape closed, that's not a fun time. I'm using these nifty sewing clips that I got off Amazon, and it came in a cute little metal cat print container too. I then press out the middle seam so that the hood lays nicely and has a little bit of structure. After that, I turn in the outside raw edge where it lines my face and I make a nice seam. I then do a little fabric draping on myself. I put the hood on and I just pin the leftover cotton along my neck. I shape the cape part later, so I don't really mind if it's choppy and looks weird now. I just wanted the cape, like I just wanted it to happen. So I pin it and I sew it. Next, I want to be able to make the cape close at my neck, so I install a little metal buckle and an eyelet. After that, I put it on my duct tape dummy, which I have a whole video over, and I trimmed the back to kind of make it look like it was clawed up and really worn. I then go back in with some dull scissors, and I use those to tear apart the edges and rip it even more, as well as cutting actual holes into the cape. For the mouth cover, I take a very stretchy old tank top and I cut out a good chunk of it, round it out for my chin and my nose, and I just sew it. It closes via a button in the back behind my head. Later, I sew a strip of leather onto it because why not? I thought it looked really cool.
Now for the hood weight, I make this little Illuminati triangle out of 2mm foam and case it in black Warbler. I tend to hang on to my Warbler a little too well and I never actually end up using it for anything, so it just kind of sits around. So I figured I would use it to give a kind of a cool look for this hood weight, and it actually acts as a weight because it's heavy, because Warbler is heavy. So I press in between all of the details. Doing this, I heat it up and then I just push into it using this super sophisticated clay tool, aka the opposite end of a paintbrush, and I press in all of the edges. Warbler has a sticky adhesive side, so it'll just stick really well to the foam. I did actually use some of my nice clay tools for this, but it just ended up sticking and tearing the Warbler, so it didn't really work really well. So the cheap end of a rounded brush worked really well. And this is so satisfying. I love watching like just Warbler go into things. That wording. I end up airbrushing the hood weight a dark brown, and I dry brushed that same brown metallic on the edges and stuff. I airbrushed the tears and the holes in the cape to further bring out that wear and tear. For the foam bracer, I laid out the first bracer I've ever made onto a piece of paper. It fits really well, so I at least know that it's the right shape. I trace it with my pinky out very far. It is leaving this planet. Why is it like that? It's trying to escape. And I draw a new pattern on. I went with a reference to Nightingale armor from Skyrim. I cut it in half to mirror it perfectly and made sure to mark where everything goes with registration marks. I then slapped it all onto 2mm foam and glued it all together and did a horrible job at filming everything. And bam, there it is. Airbrush, dry brush with that brown metallic paint and unsealed, because I just really like the way that metallic paints look without a sealer on top. So I haven't been sealing any of my props or armor for like a year now. I did the same thing with the leather wrap bracer. On the other hand, I traced my oldest bracers with my pinky in this time. I'm apparently not feeling very fancy here. And I drew on a new pattern. I wanted this to look like I wrapped leather around my wrists. So first I prepared some lining that I didn't actually use. That was just a waste of time. And then I cut 2-inch long strips out of that 50-cent thrifted trench coat. And I hemmed the edges to make a 1.5-inch thick strip. I think it was 1.5 inches, I'm not exactly sure. Once I sewed it, I put the strips onto the pattern and I cut it at the edges as needed, layered it behind the previous strip, pinned it into place, cut it, and so on. I made sure that the edge of my strip was under the hem of the strip that was on top of it, if that makes sense, so that when I went to sew it, it had room to shift a tad if needed, and it was, actually being sewn to something and not just being sewn to nothing. I then just slowly sew all of the strips together. I wish I could better explain this, as it was my first time trying this weave pattern and I'm really surprised that it worked. It turned out very nice. I'm very happy with it. I kind of want to airbrush it to give it some wear. I think that would look kind of cool. I then line the bracer with the 2-inch strips around the edges there, and I just make sure that the fit is right. After sewing those on, I mark where the eyelet holes are going to go. I punch them out, add in the eyelets, and then I lace it up with a leather cord and test the fit. It looks so cool and I'm actually really happy with it, and it's like really thick too. Like I think I could actually use this for like if I were to ever LARP or anything, like it would work. For the pauldrons, I started off normally and wrapped my shoulder like how I normally do when I start armor, doing the tinfoil and duct tape procedure. I drew on a pattern, quickly hated it, and decided to go with a Kamui cosplay pattern. I used her barbarian pattern, modified it to a shape that I thought would fit a thief a little bit better. I also stacked them together at the end after I paint everything. They are the same exact size, they're just stacked. I highly recommend her patterns. I won't show the process of cutting out the patterns because I don't want to spoil her patterns for you. Her patterns are cheap and they're wonderful and they're really good, so I recommend them. So I am making my own beveled edging by cutting out small strips of 8mm foam, holding my blade at an angle. If you were to look at the side of the strip, it would look like a triangle. So that's how I was holding my blade. I was making a triangle. So many triangles in this costume. I also do a few layers of quick seal on my seams to seal all the seams to seal them, and I make sure to sand them down to make it flat against the pauldron. To make a super cool detailed edging, I just glue on those strips that I made earlier. Wow! I fold the edging in half to find the middle of it, and then I start at the middle of the pauldron, the part that sticks out the most, and I meet it in the back where it'll be against my neck. That way, if there is a seam, it'll be hidden by the cowl, so I don't really care. I'm still using my Favy hot glue. It's Gorilla Glue brand. My foam rips before the seams come apart. That's how wonderful this hot glue is. It just takes practice to make a hot glue seam not look messy and hot gluey. But I prefer it over using barge because I don't like smells. It makes my throat hurt. Then I test the fit and see if it all works stacked together, and it does. I then sand the edges where the edging meets the raised part and just kind of even everything out. Next, I use a skinny sanding bit in my Dremel to make sword cuts in the pauldrons just to kind of make it look like I got caught a few times stealing that there sweet roll. I also stack the pauldrons in a way that they'll be in their final position, and I line up any cuts to kind of have it make sense with the top and the bottom piece, so if a blade hits me from the side, they might catch the bottom piece as well. So I'm going to cut into that just a little bit just to, tell a story, make it realistic. I then blast the cuts with my heat gun to open them up a bit, and that will also seal the foam. I then plasti dip the pauldrons to prepare them for painting. Since I thin my paint with water when I airbrush, I first apply a coat of acrylic paint onto the armor so that the airbrush paint has something to stick to. Since I primed with plasti dip, it repels water because it turns into like a rubber, so that causes the paint that I thinned with water earlier to just run and overall not look good. The paint just doesn't stick. So while that layer is drying, I make the single arm armor by cutting 4 pieces of this plate out of 2mm foam, give it some edging, and inscribe this interesting swirl detail by just barely cutting through the top of the foam. I'm not cutting it all the way through, I'm just cutting it enough to give it some detail so that when I blast it with the heat, it helps open it up and you can see the detailing. After I plasti dip them, I use a needle to get any pooled plasti dip out of the cuts and to keep them from getting clogged. I do the same thing with the first layer of paint. Next, it's time to airbrush. So I start off by doing a coat or two of this dark brown color over the whole thing. I go back into the edges with almost black. It's brown, but it's almost black, to kind of dirty up the edges a little bit, and then I go back in later with a light brown to highlight the middle of the pauldron and the edging. I do the same thing to the plates. After that, I hit all of the pieces with that brown metallic using the dry brushing technique. I just touch the sides of the edging and swipe up along the middle of the piece to kind of make it look like it got scuffed up. At this point, I finally glue the 2 pauldrons together. For the pauldron straps, I use that 50-cent thrifted leather jacket to make these straps that'll go across my chest and my back, and from one pauldron down across my body and to my belt. I just measured those spaces, got the correct length of leather, and folded each raw edge to the inside for a nice hemmed edge, and I ended up hand sewing it. Yep, I wanted an authentic hand stitched look with a light brown doubled up thread, so I hand stitched both pieces. The back strap was sewn with my machine since it's covered by my cowl, so you're not going to see that anyway. I only filmed a little bit of the hand stitching because I ended up just going into the other room to sit back on a couch because this was hurting my neck because my head is heavy. So I wanted a cool detail on the strap, which I was originally going to hand stitch in, but if I did that, I'm sure I would probably still be working on it. So instead I just hand painted it with some of that metallic brown mixed in with a little bit of gold. I just did some random swirls and dots, and you can see I tested it on my hand first just to like kind of get an idea of what I was doing. So if you keep seeing that throughout this video, the timeline is weird and messed up to fit each section separately because I tend to jump around when I'm working on stuff, so you're probably gonna see that a lot. After that dried, I glued the straps into the pauldrons. I glued the straps on. I feel like real armor makers would probably kill me. I use a lot of glue. No real attachment methods. Sometimes I'll use rivets, but glue is glue here. Just douse me in glue and stick it on me, please. Here you can see all my secrets. Secrets! So many secrets! To keep the arm plates up, I had them strapped to the pauldrons with a parachute clip, which is glued on. For some easy gloves, I traced my hand, added a seam allowance, cut it out, put it on some 4-way stretch fabric, very important that it is 4-way stretch fabric, and I sewed them together. I cut off the fingertips because I'm a thief and I need my fingers free, especially my pinky. It's ready to go, it's out of here. I wanted to make a little tide bag, so I made a big circle and I used some fabric that I used for a leaf yarn cosplay years and years ago. That's why I hold on to everything, because you never know when you need it. But then I realized that bag is way too small. That won't hold nearly the amount of sweet rolls I intend to steal. So I made a new pattern that's shaped like a strange egg and cut 2 of it, and I hand stitched these sides together. Punched some holes, threaded a leather strip through it, and bam! A bag fit for those tiny sweet rolls that I made out of clay. Next, for another nifty bag where I can hold my phone, I cut out one of the pockets of that 50-cent thrifted. I keep saying 50 cent, like look at how much I'm getting for 50 cents, okay? I stole the pocket of this leather jacket. I cut out some strips to make these straps, sewed them to the back of the pouch, installed some eyelets, used some leather cording for the tie, made some corner edging out of foam to make it look like some cool metal edges that you see on books sometimes. And now it's a little thigh bag that squeezes my thigh and makes my butt do weird things. And that's it. This video is long AF, so the scabbards and daggers will have and the scabbards and daggers will have to be for next week. But thank you so much for watching. Feel free to follow my Instagram where I post things, and I also have a Patreon, which is why I'm able to do such wonderful, awesome things. So thank you to my patrons: Adam Hunt, Aliar, Anime Crush, Blue Panda, Brian, David Rosenbaum, Eric, Jenny Lynn, Jim W, Jordy the Trekkie, Kalika Kaiser, Logan Don Carlos, Miles Meriden, Mark, Nathan M, Ninja Rookie, Nanaman, Rob Thompson, Robert Gallardo, Rusty Shackelford, Sakura, and Veldemir. Thank you guys so much. Have a super awesome rest of the day, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.